It's me, Channel Dog. How are you doing? I, for one, just looked at this Supergirl promo photo, and I feel like I've got some stuff to say. Not so much about the movie, that looks pretty cool. I feel like maybe the production design of that movie could have been a bit more out there from what we're seeing. The Woman of Tomorrow comic had a very psychedelic look, but this looks a bit more, well, Guardians of the Galaxy. Grimy space punk. I don't think the tone looks Guardians of the Galaxy at all, but the production design certainly does. And it seems like Kara wearing the suit is going to be a bit of an afterthought in this movie, as we're focused mainly on her in this trench coat, and it's not my preference, but there is a plot reason, so it is what it is. But it mainly got me thinking, gosh, we are yet to get these costumes right. We're not far into the DCU just yet, so it might be a little premature. But I don't love the direction that they've taken with the costumes so far. That's not to say there aren't any good ones, there certainly are. But there is a single inherent design philosophy going through pretty much all of the DCU costumes, and I think it is really holding them back. If we look at Supergirl's costume in this promo shot, it certainly looks like a Supergirl costume. Comic accuracy is not the problem here. But what is all this? It generally goes with the philosophy of take the superhero costume, turn it into more like a uniform, and then add a fuck ton of piping and panel lining. And I think this is really holding these costumes back now. Superman and Supergirl's costumes could have been damn near 10 out of 10s were it not for the seeming insistence on panel lines. This is an issue that also existed in the MCU long before the DCU, conversations pertaining to the costumes being over-designed, and I will say there are definitely instances where it works better than others, but I think the issue is that out of the gate, the DCU has gone very hard on these. Now, I do understand what they are trying to go for with these. The panel lining on the Kryptonian suits is supposed to look alien, but it's also supposed to look functional. Like this isn't just a bright pair of pajamas he puts on for marketing reasons. Although I do think we firmly established that this Superman here would probably just wear a costume voluntarily just to make himself more approachable. So what do we really need to justify this overall design for with these panel lines, as though it has some kind of function when it's clear that Superman would just happily wear it to be more approachable? But I don't think the problem with these suits is just inherently the panel lines on their lonesome. The problem is more just how they look. The idea of seam lines and stitching where the fabric meets is a great idea. It adds depth and it allows more visual control over the overall form of the suit. A lot of fans have noticed a recurring T pattern in MCU suits going down the chest. That pattern is just as prevalent, if not maybe even more so, on the DCU costumes so far. In fact, there isn't a single superhero costume in this universe so far that doesn't have that T pattern going down the chest. But it generally serves the purpose of adding form to the suit. It makes centralized details feel just that bit more framed, serving a similar purpose to leading lines in cinematography. The problem with the DCU suits, though, is just how pronounced this is and just how pronounced all of those tech lines are. And what's funny is David Corenswet's Superman suit is like a guide of do's and don'ts for panel lining. If we look at the panel lining around the shoulders leading around the neck, it frames the cape really nicely and it's very elegant. It feels very space-agey because they are just simple stripes. This is how you do the panel lining correctly. But then we look at his lower torso where the T-shape is, and rather than these being just breaks in the fabric or simple piping, they are fat slabs of additional fabric, and they've got this almost kind of staple-like look to them. And this has probably been done to make the suit look more technical, look more functional. But what function do these serve? Like, what do they do? Why would this not just be regular stitching? And I understand that Superman is an alien, but this doesn't really look alien, it just looks messy. While the panel lining around the collar and shoulders swept around the form, the panel lining on his torso and arms is all very sharp angles. Why? Would these not look more elegant if these were also sweeping their way around the form as opposed to just being sharp angles? This is where the Man of Steel costume got it right. You had that silver lining going around the costume, but it wasn't in sharp angles, it was all sweeping. The purpose of the superhero costume is to communicate who this character is to us in very simple terms. It communicates the powers, the personality, and their belief system. So what do these add to the message? What do these panels and staple-looking things add to who Superman is? I think if these were just simple seam lines, it would look so much better. A good point of comparison, actually, is if we take a look at, in Marvel's camp, the Spider-Man Homecoming suit and look at the blue sections. The panel lining on those is effectively spaghetti for the sake of spaghetti. But if we look at the Brand New Day suit, they have very methodically placed seam lines on it that all flow around the body. What I'm saying here is, I think Superman's costume should be a bit more Brand New Day than it is Homecoming. It's not a bad suit by any means, and from a distance, you can't really even see him, but from a distance, you can't really even see him isn't a compliment. That is just another indicator that they maybe shouldn't be there. One thing these costumes have done right, at least in my opinion, is that they've moved away from that glorified rubber muscle suit aesthetic. Henry Cavill's Superman suits after the Man of Steel suit went for this, and I think there's a time and a place for these glorified muscle suits, and it is the 90s. No one's putting on a superhero costume and having their abs rippling through it. That just isn't how fabric works. And they usually put the abs way too high up as well. I really appreciate that James Gunn made a point of not having David Corenswet's Superman rocking a muscle suit. But what I will say is a slight bit of muscle shading wouldn't go amiss, similar to the flat muscle shading that the Raimi Spider-Man costumes had. Just kind of add a few little highlights to this suit, because it is a very flat, very matted blue at the moment. I'm not saying it needs to be outright shiny, but just a tiny bit of highlight to it I think would really help. Supergirl already has two costumes in the DCU. There's the one she wears at the end of Superman, which has a much lighter shade of blue, and a much narrower, more conventional belt, but then there's the one that she has in her solo movie. And I will say it's quite an improvement in the solo movie. The general fit of the suit is better, and I really like how they've done the big chunky gold belt. It breaks up the red and the blue much more nicely than it did when you could actually see a bit of the red of the skirt going above the belt. Supergirl's suit also seems just a bit more fitting than Superman's. It looks a little stretchier, and that's good. But I think the panel line issue has only been exacerbated with this one. It looks like they've gotten even more prominent. I guess excessive panel lining is a hill that DC's just gonna die on. I will say one instance of piping done right, and I should have mentioned this with Superman as well, but I forgot. The yellow piping around the chest emblem. That's tasteful. It looks really good. No notes. I love that. Then we got the Justice Gang, and I do understand that these are corporate suits made to signify their allegiances with Maxwell Lord, but I am a bit bothered by the fact that there hasn't been the slightest allusion to the idea of them having other suits. No hint that they had suits before this, or no hint that they'll get suits later on. And there's one character this does work for, and that is Mr. Terrific. Mr. Terrific suits the leather jacket aesthetic because, I mean, that is just what Mr. Terrific wears. And it's a lovely translation of the Mr. Terrific design, so really no notes here. Mr. Terrific looks kind of perfect. He's a character that clearly fits into the DCU's design philosophy. But then we've got Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, and he's also kind of dressed like Mr. Terrific, wearing motocross leathers. And if we just look at the white sections of his suits, what is with all this panel lining? Why is it panels? Guy Gardner did wear kind of a bomber jacket deal in the comics, but the colors were a lot more simplistic. Green and black were the primary colors, while it had white accents on there. This is going overboard with the white. It's also not a construct like Green Lantern costumes in the comics typically have been post-Silver Age. And I'm okay with that because the Silver Age influence of the DCU has been pretty prevalent already in Superman. But if this is the main suit that Guy Gardner is going to wear in the DCU going forwards and he's never going to change out of it, I must admit this is not a great version of that suit. His Green Lantern logo isn't even front and center. This suit is probably a better piece of storytelling than it is a costume. But I dare say it's also more egregious with Hawkgirl's costume. The helmet looks good, I'm glad they kept that. But classic Hawkgirl looks like a warrior. This Hawkgirl looks like a motocross enthusiast. And the idea that we took 3 DC superheroes and put them all in matching costumes with just slight color highlight changes. Again, a lot of what I'm saying about these suits is really dependent on whether or not they do get other suits later down the line, which they likely will. But as it stands, as a first glimpse at what the sort of extended DCU looks like, other characters outside of Superman, these are not great. Heck, their allegiance with Maxwell Lord doesn't even factor into Superman's story. We don't see them with Max Lord until Peacemaker anyway, so for Superman we could have had them in other costumes, and then had them in their Lord Tech costumes for Peacemaker. And then perhaps the most egregious costume of the bunch so far. And again, this is largely dependent on speculation, whether or not this is actually going to be the main suit. Hal Jordan's Green Lantern suit from the Lanterns trailer. Now, this could literally just be set dressing. There's a number of times when we've seen an old-fashioned version of the suit on a hanger or something, while the suit the character wears is a bit nicer. So again, everything I'm saying here is pretty time-sensitive. But if this is the main Hal Jordan costume, while we don't have a full, clear look at it, it doesn't really communicate intergalactic authority so much as it does Militaria. It is aggressively earthy. I mean, look at that muddy shade of green. It's not very cosmic, is it? But I mean, Lanterns is supposed to be a bit more grounded, and they'll go cosmic later. But as far as our first impression of what a Hal Jordan Green Lantern costume looks like, I mean, as far as our first impression of what just a Green Lantern costume in this universe looks like in general, I think the Ryan Reynolds one's actually winning. This looks like a tailor got bored. Hey, I'll add some pleather here and some pleather there, get some lines going down there. It's very strange. And I think a through line with all of these costumes here is that they're all trying to kind of look functional. These are not like skin-tight superhero suits. These are devices. They serve a purpose. They'd feel heavy. Going by the Lanterns trailer, though, I do think that this Green Lantern costume does at least have a good shot at kind of communicating what this jaded ex-pilot Hal Jordan is all about. But on a whole, these costumes altogether are not really shaping up to be anything special. I mean, okay, Peacemaker Season 2 largely retained the same Peacemaker suit from Season 1, and that looked good. And it still looks good. Can we get more like that, please? God, what is the bat suit gonna look like? Don't do that. What do you guys think? Are you a little concerned about the DCU costumes as well? Do you kind of see the vision? What is your favorite and least favorite costume of the DCU so far? Comment below, that's what it's for. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and the hype apparently helps as well. Dislike it if you disliked it. And now, a special shout out to all my patrons. We've got Manalza, KB, Twilord Biotin, Serious Skeptic, and Mr. SP, Kale Bennett, if you read this, you're British, Dare Denny, Sad Goku, Ghostly Phantom, Xanderwolf, Channel Pup, just another evil robot clone seeking discarded naming rights, Council of Geeks, SSS06, Carl X, RT0, Marv Animation, Grant Allen, Josh Strider, Silver, Ben Raven, Basic Content, Gideon Wells, Pressplater Jason, Joseph Tribble, Cho Henshin, Shenlock Brackus, Ollie Heap, Stefan P, Chris Dorkson, Ian, Plushcap, Sonic the Screwdriver. Did you know this entire video was AI generated? I'm just gonna start calling you Adzinko from now on, Mr. Sam Webster, Mr. Terry Chaos, Ryan Simnett, Jordan R, Rusty Bucks Cat at the Soleil Studio, Just a Dreamer, Smacko, Hollow Apple, Renbo, Rhythm and Tempo, Aquil Jaguar, Sniggins, Steel Joe 1120, D Henderson, and Z Whites. Thank you folks so much for your generosity. And to the rest of you, the buffet is open over on my channel. Grab yourself a plate. Peace.